Some countries change the world with armies, others change it with ideas. France did both, and it helped design the modern world. I'm Ryan, and on this channel we explore what countries have contributed to the rest of the world. Not just who they are, but how they've shaped your everyday life without you realizing it. France didn't just leave its mark on history, it helped design the modern default. From the way we measure reality to how we fight disease, French ideas are quietly everywhere. Let's take a look at what France gave the world and the people who made it happen. If you've ever measured something, taken medicine, looked at a photograph, or even argued about human rights over the internet, France is already a part of your everyday life. Let's start simple. About 95% of the people on the planet measure the world using the metric system, the French way, using meters, kilograms, and liters. One town's pound was another town's sort of a pound. So they created a rational universal system tied to the earth itself. Today, nearly every country on the planet uses it. Even the United States, which pretends it doesn't like metric, uses it in labs, hospitals, and the military. Just don't confuse kilometers with miles per hour. It could really extend your trip. Now let's raise the stakes. The reason why milk doesn't quietly try to kill you? Louis Pasteur. He proved that microorganisms cause disease. That breakthrough reshaped medicine, surgery, sanitation, and food safety. Pasteurization alone changed global public health. Life expectancy did not rise because people suddenly got tougher. It rose because science got smarter. And a lot of that science was French. Pivoting to the visual arts, France revolutionized how we see reality. In the 1800s, Louis Daguerre developed one of the first practical photographic processes. For the first time, humanity could capture moments instead of just painting them. Since then, journalism changed, memory changed, even evidence changed. The French didn't just measure the world, they helped us see it. Louis Braille lost his sight as a child after an accident in his father's workshop. By the time he was a teenager, he already was working on a solution to the problem that he lived with every day. Braille developed the raised dot reading system that now bears his name. He didn't invent it for fame, he invented it because he needed it. Today, millions of visually impaired readers around the world access language because of a French student who refused to accept limitation. That's not just innovation, that's dignity. Zooming out, after the revolution, France reorganized its legal system into a more fair and clear written code. Known as the Napoleonic Code, that framework spread across Europe, Latin America, and parts of Africa and the Middle East. For example, before this code, laws often treated nobles and commoners differently. The Napoleonic Code established that all male citizens were equal before the law. No special legal privileges based on birth. That principle is now a basic expectation in modern democracies for all people, not just the men. That came later. Today, large parts of the world don't just live differently, they are governed differently because of legal structures that France exported. That's influence you don't see, but live inside. And finally, France gave the world the Declaration of the Rights of Man. In 1789, France declared that rights belong to individuals simply because they're human. And while that sounds obvious now, it was radical then, and it was dangerous. France decided that we have rights, not because a king allowed it, not because a church approves it, but because we exist. That idea influenced constitutions, shaped revolutions, and echoes in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights after World War II. When you look at these contributions alone, you start to see that France didn't just contribute culture, it helped define the modern default. So here's the thing, ideas don't invent themselves. So behind everything we've talked about are people. Brilliant, flawed, stubborn, visionary. And once you understand who they were, France makes a lot of sense. Let's meet them. The French are a Western European people, distinct from the traditions of the Anglos in the north and the Mediterranean cultures in the south. For centuries, their language was not just spoken, it was negotiated in. France became the language of diplomacy, treaties, and elite culture across Europe. Culturally, the French take ideas seriously. Debate isn't a hobby, it's public life. Public emotion may be restrained, public opinion rarely is. This is a culture shaped by revolutions, occupations, and reinvention, where survival often meant redefining the rules rather than accepting them. That's why France doesn't just produce artists or thinkers, it produces people who challenge systems and expect to be heard. And few people embodied that ambition, intellect, and force of will more than the man who would redraw the map of Europe, Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon is often remembered for military ambition, and yes, he conquered much of Europe. But his most lasting influence wasn't on the battlefield, it was in paperwork. Under Napoleon, France reorganized its legal and administrative system into something structured, centralized, and exportable. The Napoleonic Code spread across Europe and into much of the rest of the world. Napoleon didn't just move borders, he moved the architecture of governance. If Napoleon shaped the machinery of the state, then Baron de Montesquieu shaped its logic. In the 1700s, Montesquieu argued that power should not sit in one set of hands. It should be divided, executive, legislative, and judicial, each checking the others. That idea crossed the Atlantic and became foundational in constitutional design. He wasn't alone in shaping French Enlightenment thought. Voltaire pushed fiercely for civil liberties and freedom of expression. Jean-Jacques Rousseau debated the social contract between citizens and the state. But it was Montesquieu's structural clarity, separating power so it could restrain itself, that became blueprint. France didn't just reshape institutions, it reshaped identity. Coco Chanel transformed women's fashion in the 20th century. At a time when clothing was restrictive and ornamental, she introduced simplicity, mobility, and practicality. She didn't design for decoration, she designed for movement. The modern suit silhouette, the little black dress, minimalism in fashion. These weren't just aesthetic changes, they signaled a shift in how women moved through public life. Chanel's influence extended well beyond Paris. From New York to Tokyo, the language of elegance carried French roots. France didn't just define rights in theory, it influenced how people physically occupied space. If the Enlightenment defined liberty in politics, Simone de Beauvoir asked a deeper question. What does freedom look like in everyday life? In the mid-20th century, her writing examined how gender roles were constructed, not natural, not inevitable, but built by culture. Her work helped shape modern feminist thought around the world. She pushed intellectual debate beyond government structures and into personal autonomy. Freedom wasn't just about voting or law, it was about identity. Before we head to the Diaspora section, France gave the world a new way to look at the planet itself. Jacques Cousteau brought the ocean into living rooms around the globe. Through documentaries and exploration, he made underwater ecosystems visible to the public. Before Cousteau, the sea was distant. After Cousteau, it was fragile. Modern environmental awareness, especially ocean conservation, owes much to his ability to combine science, storytelling, and visual media. He didn't just explore the ocean, he changed how we feel about it. Ideas rarely stay where they're born. When the French moved across borders, they brought a lot with them. Across centuries, French people left home for many reasons: exploration, trade, religious conflict, and the political upheavals that periodically reshaped Europe. But when they left, they carried more than their belongings. They carried language, culture, and ways of organizing society that continued shaping the places they settled. You can see that influence most clearly in Canada. Beginning in the 1600s, French settlers built communities along the St. Lawrence River that would eventually grow into modern Quebec. Unlike many diaspora stories, the French language and culture there did not fade, it endured. Today, Quebec remains one of the largest French-speaking societies in the world outside of France. That legacy helped produce leaders like Pierre Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister that helped shape modern Canada. His push for bilingualism and constitutional rights helped ensure that French culture in North America remained a living force rather than a historical footnote. French influence also shaped parts of the United States, especially in Louisiana. Many Cajuns trace their roots to French settlers expelled from Acadia in the 1700s who rebuilt their lives in the bayous of southern Louisiana. Over time, they developed a culture known for its music, language, and especially its cuisine. One of the most recognizable figures to emerge from that tradition is Chef Paul Prudhomme, whose cooking helped bring Cajun flavors like black and red fish to kitchens across the United States. French culture even reached into South America. In the 1800s, leaders in Buenos Aires looked to Paris when redesigning their capital, creating boulevards and architecture that still give the city its nickname today, the Paris of South America. So France's diaspora story isn't just about where people moved, it's about how French language, culture, and ideas kept shaping the world, sometimes thousands of miles from where they began. If you want to understand France, you have to see where it sits on the map. France stretches across Western Europe, bordered by Spain, Italy, Germany, Belgium, and Switzerland, with coastlines on both the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. This geography explains a lot. To the north and west, wide plains made agriculture strong and centralized power possible. To the south, the Mediterranean opened France to trade, art, and cultural exchange. To the east, mountain ranges like the Alps formed both natural borders and historic battlegrounds. What I'm trying to say is that France is not hidden at the edge of Europe. It sits right at the center of it. And when you sit at the crossroads of Europe like that, people come. Not just diplomats, not just traders, but tourists. France is the most visited country on Earth. If France is the center of Europe, then Paris is the center of France. The Eiffel Tower rises over the Seine, once a symbol of industrial ambition, now the most recognizable skyline in Europe. Just across the river sits the Louvre, home to centuries of art that helped define Western culture. Notre Dame anchors the medieval heart of the city, while the grand boulevards and cafes remind you that this is a place where ideas were debated publicly, sometimes loudly. Paris isn't just beautiful, it's layered. Royal power at Versailles just outside the city, revolution in its streets, art, fashion, philosophy, all concentrated within a few square miles. And Paris is only the beginning. Off the coast of Normandy, Mont Saint-Michel rises out of the sea like something imagined before it was engineered. A medieval monastery perched on a tidal island, cut off from the mainland at high tide. It's part fortress, part face, part geography lesson. Head south and the atmosphere shifts entirely. Along the French Riviera, the Mediterranean light changes everything. Cities like Nice stretch along the turquoise water, where France feels less Northern European and more sun-soaked crossroads of culture and trade. In the Loire Valley, Renaissance chateaux line the riverbanks, reminders of a time when French kings centralized power and displayed it in stone. These weren't just homes, they were statements. And then there are the Normandy beaches, quiet now, windswept and solemn, where the course of World War II shifted in 1944. Few landscapes carry that kind of global memory. France attracts visitors because it offers contrast, and somehow it all fits within one country. France's story is one of power and reinvention. It grew out of Roman Gaul and became one of Europe's strongest medieval kingdoms, with monarchs who centralized authority and turned Paris into the political heart of the nation. But medieval France was also forged through conflict. During the 100 Years' War, much of the country was contested between French and English crowns. In the middle of that struggle, a teenage peasant named Joan of Arc helped rally French forces and became a lasting symbol of national resistance. By the 1700s, that power reached its peak under absolute monarchy. Then everything broke. The French Revolution didn't just remove a king, it challenged the entire idea that authority flowed from the top down. In its place came citizenship, rights, and a new national identity. Out of that upheaval rose Napoleon, who spread French legal systems across Europe. France later built a vast global empire, and the 20th century brought occupation, war, and liberation. Modern France emerged from those trials as a republic, committed to secular citizenship, centralized government, and European cooperation. From monarchy to revolution, empire to republic, France has repeatedly rewritten its own rules. French cuisine isn't just about recipes, it's about technique. For centuries, French cooks approached food almost like a craft, layering flavors, refining sauces, and building dishes step by step. That attention to technique helped turn cooking into something more than daily necessity. It became culture. One classic example is beef bourguignon. Beef slowly braised in red wine with onions, mushrooms, and herbs until the flavor deepens into something rich and complex. The ingredients are simple, but the patience and balance reflect the heart of French cooking. Ratatouille, a vegetable stew from southern France, brings together tomatoes, eggplant, zucchini, and herbs in a way that captures the Mediterranean sun. I'm not gonna lie, the first time I ever heard about it was when I was watching Ratatouille with my kids. When I tasted it for the first time, it completely changed the way I thought a simple meal could be. Then there's Coco, chicken simmered in wine with garlic, mushrooms, and bacon, turning humble ingredients into something elegant. And bouillabaisse, a fisherman's stew from Marseille, it combines several types of fresh seafood with saffron and herbs, a reminder of France's long relationship with the sea. Geography shapes all of it. Northern regions favor butter and cream. Mediterranean areas lean towards olive oil, garlic, and herbs. Wine regions like Bordeaux and Burgundy shape both the ingredients and the identity of the cuisine itself. So even when you're not eating in France, there's a good chance you're eating in its tradition. For our first interesting fact, let's keep it culinary because France did so much more than just influence what we eat. After the French Revolution, many aristocratic chefs suddenly lost their wealthy employers. Instead of cooking for nobles, they opened kitchens to the public. Paris soon filled with places where ordinary people could sit at individual tables, order from a menu, and choose from multiple courses. In other words, the modern restaurant. The system we take for granted today, menus, courses, professional kitchens, largely grew out of France. And words like chef, cuisine, entree, sauté, soufflé, and à la carte all came directly from French kitchens. And finally, long before there were ever airplanes, the first people to ever leave the ground were in France. In 1783, the Montgolfier brothers launched a hot air balloon carrying passengers over the countryside outside of Paris. For the first time in human history, people weren't just imagining flight, they were experiencing it. Crowds watched as the balloon lifted into the sky, proving that humans could rise above the earth itself. And in a way, it captured something about France, a country willing to experiment, challenge limits, and turn bold ideas into reality. France didn't just leave its mark on history, it helped design the systems that we live inside, from measurement and medicine to rites, cuisine, and even the language of the restaurant table. That's the kind of influence that you don't always see, but once you notice it, you start seeing it everywhere. Thank you for exploring our global community with me. Next time, we travel to Italy, a country that helped build civilization twice. I'll see you there.